right, hey everyone. So today we are with Eddie, otherwise known as Nrabbit from GEMP. So he was one of the top 8 in 2024, and pleasure to speak to you today, sir. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. All right, so I am going to go ahead and go straight to the screen. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go over the kind of start with kind of the ISB deck you went over. Uh, Let me know if you can see my screen.
Uh, Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, do you see now?
No. Oh, wait, hold on. Maybe it's on my end. Oh, it's coming. Yep. Okay, I can see your screen now.
All right, great. If you have an issue, I'll turn off my camera. Then you say, okay. So this is the deck you used last year. ISB focused on space. And maybe you could kind of talk a little bit of kind of why you chose the deck. So I know there's another ISB deck from 2021. I think you said you were inspired by it some, but maybe you could talk a little bit about your deck choices, and I'm happy to mouse over or look up cards, whatever you say.
Sure. One of the big things that drove me to pick this deck is really what I kind of expected the meta to consist of. And, the predominant deck for light side I viewed was going to be Throne Room Remains of some sort. It's very good against raw tier operations. It can be pretty good against Bring 'em Before Me, depending how it's built. So, and I tend to believe that this has a good matchup against Throne Remains. And so I pretty much went with that route, and then I added a couple cards here and there to maybe take care of some other things that I might have expected, maybe some opponents to play. I will mention that I was number 5 out of top 8, and so I focused really what I thought the top 4 might play, because that was going to be my first match.
Makes sense. So if I look at some of these deck choices, so I mean I see Cannot Hide Forever, and I see you had Resistance,
hmm
and then I see Projective Telepathy. So you only had one person with a lightsaber, like one ground person. So you were expecting a lot of numbers and anger, fear, aggression. Was that kind of part of why I see like kind of 3 defensive cards in that vein right there?
Yeah, I really didn't want to get caught by that. I knew that some players would play inserts of some sort, and so I didn't want to risk that being an automatic loss.
Yep. Makes perfect sense. Did you put more than other players might, or because some players, like they try to do resistance, but not, cannot hide forever. Because resistance could, as long as you control 3 battlegrounds, it will protect you
hmm
against both. I don't usually see people do all 3, which I thought was interesting. I think the sample game I saw, projected telepathy ended up helping you against an
Yep.
insert basically there. Um, Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just say that resistance in some situations isn't enough, or it can be hard to satisfy while your opponent satisfies a battleground. So there are scenarios, and I know of decks that people I expected to play where I could get in a situation where I'm not satisfying resistance while getting hit with numbers,
Mhm.
and that's why I included. I think you cannot hide forever. In hindsight, it was probably overkill because I know one card I wish I had in hindsight was coward. So maybe the you cannot hide forever might have been better served as a come here you big coward.
Potentially. I guess, I mean, when I saw this, I mean, I was thinking, well, you have, something special planned for them, which, when I was originally looking at this deck, I was wondering, well, he's only got one grabber, but then I saw this and I was like, oh, okay, so you're kind of being an anti-retrieval, so you don't need to grab if you automatically cancel them,
Mhm.
and this really goes well with your Star Destroyer. So I thought you were doing cannot hide to be an extra cover for something special, but maybe that wasn't exactly your intention there originally.
It's definitely a benefit, or I guess a bonus of You Cannot Hide that I could pull
Yeah.
something special planned.
Yeah. Yeah, no, very cool. And one thing I liked about this, because when I compared this kind of like to kind of Olson's from 2021, one of the difference was, of course, they had indoor docking bay, they had a couple of Tempests,
Hmm.
and they were really trying to kind of be ground, right? They had the Tarkin here, and they had like a choke fader, which I guess
Right.
arguably could either way. But I like the fact that you were focused on in space, and if you think you're going to face TRM, well, TRM is usually very ground heavy, right? They're going to have
Hmm.
several people. So I like the fact that you kind of went more the space route, more the tech route, and kind of less concerned about competing on the ground. Was that kind of your thought process too?
Yeah, no, exactly. Because TRM, one of the things that it wants to do is drain you at your own locations. So if you give them none, then they have none, and you can really shut down their entire drain with 5d6. Right? You get in a situation where maybe I satisfy cow or decree, and then I drop down 5d6. Then they're getting no damage in. Right? Um, Now, decree may be a little harder to satisfy because I have to control some planet sites. So maybe that's not. Uh, Maybe I should have thought a little bit more about that in hindsight as I'm looking at this.
Yeah.
Actually, no. I think it would be possible because I do have some power to control one ground location. But yeah, with 5d6, I'm able to. I can potentially shut down their whole all their damage. And this deck really wants to battle in space. It has a lot of space power. So if they do come to space, it can be a little risky for them.
No, agreed. And you had some interesting tech here. So I really like the fact that you had reactor terminal, and you had overload, which we're used to seeing brightness decks have this, not necessarily a space deck. But then I thought about it, so I was like, hey, you can, you put a Jedi Luke or or a Ben Kenobi, at Tatooine with his saber, and if you're patient, you can kind of blow them up. I guess the only thing I was thinking about though is, of course, that if you want to overload, that requires a 0. So either you'd have to not deploy, like one of your 4 planet sites, or you'd have to have Ozzel. So was that kind of your plan to like sacrifice, like I'll never deploy one of these planets, or I'll hold back Ozzel purposefully, or help me understand that a little bit.
Well, another thing too is you can lose Oslo somehow and retrieve him back, and now you track that back and from there,
True, true.
and that's one of the ways. Or you naturally, see a 0, and then you just have to track it all game.
Possibly. Yeah, that makes sense. So what made you choose, I guess, overload versus maybe, thinking with their stomach, that card?
Yeah, thinking with your stomach is also a good card. They both have different use cases. Uh, I went with the overload. It can also hit ships, and one of the things that I'm worried about too is just like you said, Jedi Luke with the saber just chilling at a site, draining for whatever 3 or something, and this stops that immediately. Always thinking with your stomach might not stop that. And let's go back to the situation where I have 5d6 somehow. They're draining for 2, and it's just a drain race. So 5d6 lowers their drain by 1, right? So the only thing pushing their damage is the lightsaber. And a lot of times they're going to have a EPP Obi and Jedi Saber on Luke. And if I kill Luke, they're doing no damage. So this deck really wants to lock the game down.
Makes a lot of sense. And I guess one other thing I was thinking about, obviously, is you had Gravity Shadow. I think that the 2021 deck had this.
Mhm.
When I was young, I did not understand this, and I guess it's only as you grow older and you kind of play the game more higher level, you kind of understand this. So, um, tell me a little bit about this one, because obviously you have to know the pilot's ability. So, like, are you going in this deck like planning to track a lot of your destinies throughout the game, like every time you retrieve an outer rim scout, are you tracking that 2 in case they have the ability to ship? Or if you retrieve Ozzel, you're tracking the 0 in case, well, I guess a 0 wouldn't help you with this one. Or maybe if you used a
No.
masterful move, or you're tracking the 6 in case they somehow put a Jedi Luke on a ship or something. Help me understand this one.
Well, another use, and I think is actually what happened in the game, and unfortunately, I think I killed the ship instead of doing what I wanted, which was keep the ship there. So it stops hyper escape because let's say an X-wing swarm deck swarms down on your guys, or maybe there's just a couple ships and you attack with something big, they hyper escape away and you gravity shadow their last ship. Now it's one ship versus your big whatever power you have in space, or it
Mhm.
just stops hyper escape for the one ship.
Okay, so
Or and you can
okay,
also kill things with it. It's a little harder to do, but yeah, that's that's one of the or two, I guess, different use cases for it.
okay. So in your mind, it was more about getting Destiny greater than pilot ability because you're expecting you're expecting a low ability ship is kind of what you're saying here. Um,
No, I mean use it either or. Use it either or, and that's the purpose again for reactor terminal,
mhm.
right? In addition to cycling through things, you're also setting things up to track, and if they're just bouncing around with Super Falcon, that's one way to kill Super Falcon.
Because you're getting what you're getting you're tracking a 3 and you're killing Han, or you're
Yeah,
just
sure. Yeah, yeah, whatever. You can kill a ship with it. It's a way to kill a ship.
true. Okay. So if you had Han or Leia, if you tracked a 3 or a 4, so the more pilots they have, then the more
Well,
chances
it would
you.
have to be so it's actually a 4. I think it's based on the highest ability pilot.
Mm, okay, you're right. High split. I see your point. Yeah, correct. I see. Okay.
But
All right.
yeah, it can be used, to for a beatdown uh or to kill a ship.
Okay. Nice. And then I suppose in a similar vein, you have I Lost R2. It doesn't exactly kill them, but
Mhm.
you only need to have a destiny of 2, which you have a lot of the outer rim scouts. So are you just like trying to isolate like a Super Falcon or a Home One or something and saying you can't move? I don't have to deal with you.
That's one big way to do it. It also if if you have big power and they're um kind of running from you, they can't run anymore, right? So they're forced to battle into you or let you battle into them.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So you kind of were expecting like potentially a weaker ship, maybe. Were you expecting a hidden base, or maybe if they played a hidden base and they kind of had like a like a red X-wing pilot, 2 ability, and they just try to isolate them basically, so they can't move, and therefore you can move all of your ships, or if it's a home one, whatever, you can just ignore it until. I guess I'm saying is like even if you put a ship there that's like a home one or a super falcon, whatever, you're planning to engage it later on your terms when you're ready. Is that kind of your thinking going into this?
That's one way. I mean, one other one is let's say they run away to a non-battleground system that they can't drain at, and you just strand their ship there, and it's useless.
Makes sense. Okay, so if they had like an Alderaan or something in their deck.
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, or let's say they start at rendezvous point for some reason, and then you just strand their ship there until they can't come out.
True. True. I like it. And so let's talk about some of the ship choices here, because one thing I didn't understand. So obviously, the previous deck, they had 2 Death Squadron, Star Destroyers. They started with Dominator, and they had Executor, which you kind of went the same vein. You kind of copied what they had in this case.
Hmm.
One thing I didn't understand though is, I get the fact that you're going to pull Executor at the beginning, like that's kind of your main ship. You're going to try to get the -5 to deploy for Fondor, make it deploy for 10, and if you don't, and because you have your choices here, because this is Parsec 8, 6, 8, and 7, they can all kind of move between. So even if you deploy these ships where Executor is, you're getting that. But why not like a one thing like Chimera or something like, or like another, or Chimera, however you say it, another ship where you're kind of getting this immunity to attrition. Is it just because of the deployment difference? You didn't want to bother with this thing because I know you have Ketzel here too, or help me understand like why you left kind of the ships where it was from the other person's deck.
Yeah, in hindsight, maybe a Chimera made sense. The deploy -2 is definitely very relevant. And can you go back to Chimera? I'm
Yeah, of
just trying to
course,
remember.
absolutely. Yeah, it's immune
Yeah, I
attrition
mean, the immunity to
less than
attrition is
4.
the same,
It's the same
and
unless you have an
it's
imperial leader, right? Which you have two imperial. Well, you have Ozil and you have Piet. It's a little bit harder to get Piet to Chimera. You have to do a transfer, or just eat the cost, kind of thing.
right. Yeah, and also it's Destiny 2, I guess. Yeah, you could argue, man, Chimera might fit in there, but I just kept the ships the same. I think I might have looked at Chimera, but in the end, I think I just went with this.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, homing beacon, that was an addition. That was a change. I thought this was cool. So, I guess, being able to move for free, react to that location. So, um, playing with this, I did a test game myself, and I did a react with all my ships as soon as I was ready. So you talked earlier about
Mhm.
the point of this deck is to kind of, what'd you say, like what was your like trying to close the game and trying to reduce your ability to receive damage and kind of things like that.
Yeah, like you want to control space and you want to lock the game down and minimize the ground drain,
Right.
and then you whittle them away after you've controlled space.
And so
And
this is, yeah,
obviously the landing claw is annoying, so you want a way to get rid of the landing claw.
sure.
Destiny 5 is good.
Sure. Absolutely. And this, oh, you're right. You have two ways to get landing claw. Oh, yeah, you're right. This cancels
Mhm.
landing claw and Godhurt cancels landing claw. So that's good,
Yeah,
obviously.
and Goddard's good on his own. Yeah, so a lot of things are dual use or just good use and high destiny for card choices.
And is this a meta choice like you were expecting potentially, landing claw? So you had kind of like two different ways to do landing claw in your mind, or just kind of like it was just more of the perspective of
Yeah. Well, landing claw sucks. Hurts this deck a good amount. So I wanted to reliably get rid of it. And again, Destiny 5, and then the React is pretty good too.
for sure. Cool. All right. Well, I do have the kind of the YouTube video of kind of seeing some of this deck in action. I only have one example of that. Any other thoughts before we kind of look at this kind of in play, and gain some insights from there?
No, I thought it was a fun deck. Again, I wish I had Coward in the deck. Uh, but yeah, curious what questions you have about the replay.
Sure, absolutely. So let me oh, not this one. Let me find the correct one. All right, let me pause a second. I'll get it. Okay, so I got the video up. I'm not going to do the audio here, so I'm just going to kind of skip around a little bit here. So I think you had I think you had a slightly slower, maybe potentially start, but otherwise you got uh, you got your admirals to the docking bay, and then you're trying to get the extra force, and then you're trying to kind of get your locations, everything you can get. There was one point here where I believe you ended up having you had like two ISB agents, and then I believe you use reactor terminal and you got rid of one of these, is what
Hmm.
is what you did. So, and I guess I was a little curious on that one because were you just worried about getting a Grimtosh from
Yeah.
this, and was that kind of the main reason?
Yes.
Okay. Then I think later on, we see. All right, so your opponent puts draw their fire, willing to attack you. You are getting ready to, put your, people onto your ships. trying to get ready to deploy that as soon as you can. You needed to kind of deploy Fonder. You ended up deploying this first, and I think it's fairly standard for a little bit. You get stone piled. I think you had an overload here. I think your overload got stone piled, unfortunately for you. And later in the game, you ended up trying to go back. So um, I guess I was wondering here, whenever you use reactor terminal, you put away one of your outer rim scouts. Eventually, you
Uh-huh.
end up using against here. Were you tracking that too against this, or is that just
No.
was that just a blind? Like when you have using overload, eventually was that a blind call, or what was that?
So overload I had tracked. The gravity shadow is actually very unfortunate because he moves away and I gravity shadow him to keep him there and it kills the ship instead, which actually was the best thing that could have happened for my opponent Paul because otherwise I'm overflowing him in the next battle.
Yeah. So
So
yeah.
that actually was very unlucky for me.
Okay,
But yeah,
and
the
that was
overload I had tracked.
yeah. Okay, and okay, but okay. So you did not track the gravity shadow. I guess what you're saying, or however you use this one. I
Right.
didn't see it.
I just did it blind.
Okay. All right. And you weren't worried about wasting. I guess that's the part that gets me. I guess was your thought process like you should have lots of high enough destinies and your chance of getting a 3 is sufficiently high, or what was that?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I was getting to a point where I wanted to, or I felt I probably needed to just take a chance.
Okay.
And maybe I might have looked at my deck too, because I think there was a couple opportunities to do it. Same thing with I've lost R2, which I think I lost to Stonepile.
I believe
But
so. I believe so, unfortunately. And so yeah, and so I think he deployed, OB deployed or Marco, he deployed to the Tatooine. I think, and then you ended up putting, your spy here, but then he used your site against you, which is, unfortunately the one thing I dislike about deploying um uh docking bays is because the light side TRM base decks or heavy main, they always love to see your docking bay. They did it to you here too. I think though, I think he's force draining you here, or you're losing force. I guess you're losing force from anger, fear, aggression. You end up losing your droid guy here. I guess I was curious why you end up choosing to lose him because I would have thought like why not deploy him here and then you have to save out some force and then do a document transfer over to executor. Um, that part I didn't understand. Whenever it happens later in the game.
yeah, I probably could have done that. And I'm trying to remember why I didn't. I was just force. I was using force for something else. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
think I seem to.
yeah. You deployed your boss, and you deployed, I guess, another ISB agent, and you wanted to go to Dagobah, and you wanted to get one of your stone piles or both stone piles back. So you didn't save any
Yeah.
force; you just deployed and moved. It seems like this turn here.
Yeah, I think so. And but yeah, you're right. I could have went down and then docking bay transited him over. I also think it's I don't know. I might have thought that he had maybe I was just trying to overload him. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, I could have done that.
Okay, and I think a later on portion of this game, obviously you're going to Dagobah. Unfortunately, it takes you 2 turns. You have to, one turn to move and a next turn to land. And I think your next turn, very obviously, you land on Yoda's hut because Yoda cannot battle because he says, you have to have ability 4. Well, you don't have ability 4 here. So you land here, you cancel the text for Yoda's hut, and you get your cards back and cancel Stonepile. So awesome. What I didn't understand here at this point, like, why didn't you, like get out and then move to the other Dagobah site? Like, why not move this character here? Of course, you'd have to pay 3, pay 3, pay 3. You'd have to pay a lot of force to drain. I guess that was my only question of why. Because later on, you just pick back up. You pick back up, go to Dagobah, go back to the site where Leia is, and unfortunately, you end up losing a lot of force because I think because Leia just attacks you there. I want to understand that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that is an option, but I wanted the overload back, and I think eventually it ends up being less force I have to spend to get 2 cards back and I really wanted the overload back.
Yeah.
And then of course I do the mistake and I overloaded Leia because I thought that the tests would go away, but that is not the case. So I
Mm,
should have overloaded Obi, obviously.
yeah. Okay.
So yeah.
All right. Yeah, I guess that was the only other thing. So, unfortunately, he ends up, battling you here. He retrieves one, and you end up losing more force than you gain from getting your cards back. But okay, yeah, you have overload back, and then I guess what happens is I guess you forgot about a Jedi Test 2, and then later on he has another ship that just comes and battles you, and then that was the GG. You just forgot about it, or help me understand that one.
No, so he battles me. So yeah, so this was an interesting decision I had to make. So in hindsight, after seeing the deck list, I could have won the game had I kept playing. But what I didn't know is if he had another anger, fear, aggression, or another on the edge. Because if he, what I was, he draws up to like and leaves four down, and I'm thinking, okay, if I lose, this is a perfect time to lose because the differential is extremely low. Um, but I didn't know that, right? And I thought, okay, I kind of weighed my odds and thought, I guess I really didn't think all the way that hey, I could win because I can win if I keep playing because he doesn't have those cards, but I don't know that. And so I just took the gamble, like, hey, he's at 4 life force. I'm just going to lose and then try to win by more than four, which isn't too hard to do, right?
Okay,
Right? Because
so
if he's tracking a 7, retrieves 6, now I'm at more like 10. That's harder, harder to do, obviously.
okay.
But uh, so basically, what ends up happening is he's draining me for 1. I'm draining him for 1 and retrieving 1. And eventually, he's not going to be able to move because of something special planned for them.
Mhm.
So I could have won the game, but I was really expecting or hoping he didn't have another on the edge. So I just figured, okay, he drew what very high. And I'm just gonna lose to get a very low differential.
And yeah, okay. So yeah, if he'd gotten on the edge, he could have potentially I guess he had a 7 in the deck. I don't know where a 7 went. So he could have potentially gotten a maximum of 6 cards. And so the
Hmm.
idea was is that he could then he would just beat you in the drain race, I guess. So if he had 6 more cards, if he had 10 force instead, he would be able to win, I guess was the
Well,
concern.
then he has an anger. Maybe then he retrieves an anger, fear, aggression, and now
Okay.
he starts. Yeah,
Okay.
then just keep. Right.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, cool. All right, well that's helpful. Yeah, when I watched this, I didn't exactly understand, but I appreciate the feedback because it did feel like it was a game where you did have some edge, but he did blindside you here, correct? Like you weren't expecting him to have his Lando, right? The Lando and Falcon. Am I understanding there, or kind of what happened there?
Uh,
Like,
I was not blind. I'll just say I was not blindsided by it.
okay, okay, all right. Yeah, I guess you had 12. I guess it wasn't too bad. Okay, cool. All right. Great. Okay, so we could talk about your TRM deck if you wanted to.
Sure,
All right,
let's
sounds
do it.
good. Just a helpful note, like there are multiple ISB decks, but we don't see this. We don't see this kind anymore at all. We don't see ISB ground anymore. So this did win way
Well,
long
there
ago.
is it.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
is it. It exists, and
Okay,
I see it from time to time. ISB scum.
okay. True. You do have ISB scum degree. Yeah, you'll deploy Jabba's Palace. That's true. That is true. That is very true. All right, so let's pull up the deck you did for the How Do We Get in This Mess? Right. Okay. So, this is an interesting deck. I think, yeah, there's another deck in 2021 that was a little bit similar. Um, I think you changed a few things around. Maybe you could kind of like talk about your process for this one.
I don't know what deck you're talking about. I just
Oh, oops,
knew.
yeah, you go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just kind of came up with this by myself. Um, this deck was designed for raw tier operations,
Okay.
and you know, one of the things that beats raw tier as TRM is just the fact that you can activate so much before they're able to safely flip, and now you kind of control raw tier, and they're kind of screwed. And so this deck tries to do that like TRM, but kind of in an accelerated way, using the how did we get into this mess engine, but it also obviously sets up a very quick, nasty numbers.
Right. Right. Which, I was happy to see. Some people downplay numbers, but it's legit strategy if you can get away with
Mhm.
it. And in Death Star 2 and above, you do have the starting effect. Anyone can use the starting effect if they want to and completely nullify this. And they don't. And
Right.
I love it when people try to slip in. So I think it's cool that you did it. Because of course, as soon as one person knows you have numbers, everyone knows you have numbers in the top eight. So you can't hide it. So you did two here, right? It's hard to do too many of these things, but I think no, I think it's cool that you did it. And you tried it for sure.
Thanks. Yeah, and I actually got it off in my game. Uh, Unfortunately, I got a face with Doctor Torch, and he's obviously a very good player,
Right.
and he wasn't playing ROPS. But this deck, I think the three other top four people were playing ROPS, and that was really what I was kind of banking on. I played the odds; it didn't work out, but yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, okay. So this was initially an anti-ROPS. Only thing I think is interesting is just because ROPS they tend to have troopers or they tend to have pilots, kind of ability two. So not ability one, maybe might get like three twos or something, or like two threes and a two or something. So not necessarily as high, but you can definitely hurt them. And so you opted only for four droids here. Um, I guess, I guess a little bit curious why one R2D2 versus having two potentially, maybe. Just because you're trying to make them, or you're not really caring about. Obviously, you did them because he has the 1 to 3 activate one force, 4 to 6 draw a card. Help me understand kind of that choice as kind of how many like droids to do here, because you obviously need
Sure,
it
I'm
for
just.
your yeah.
Can you go over 8 really fast?
Yeah, of
Trying to
course,
remember.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so it's all about setting it up as soon as you can, right? And so if I have three R2s and how did we get into this mess? Three R2s. One, they're expensive. Two, I can't, deploy more than one. So I I want to just cycle through my deck, deploy a droid as I'm cycling through my deck, and I can deploy 188, one R2, one R, whatever the other guy is, and for pretty cheap. Because right, 88's one. The other droid I think is also one or two,
Yeah, he's
and
one,
R2
correct,
is three. Yeah, one. So for
correct.
five force, I have what is that? 14 destiny on the table, and I could probably do that turn two, depending what my hand is.
Yeah, so yeah, I guess because for me when I'm doing numbers, I usually like try to have, five or six cards usually, right? Speaking different. Like so I love the generic one because you could have two R2X2s. Like there's three different, one deploy droids here. Now,
Hmm.
of course, I've never played How to Get in This Mess there. So basically, you're saying it takes you one force, but then you get to draw one extra card. And so I don't know your test games, whatever, but are you typically able to get your three droids, and is that your plan? Get three droids, do
No,
well, yeah. What's the plan? Go
I
ahead.
mean, well, that is a plan, but as you see, there's a lot of characters that are also Destiny One. Like a lot of decks, if they go all in on numbers, and I started the anti numbers card, you can't do anything. Your deck's kind of hosed. Now you
Mhm.
have 20 cards dedicated to a strategy that does nothing.
Right.
So I didn't want to do that. I wanted to have, hey, I have a lot of power, but by the way, I can also just hit you for big numbers,
Mhm.
depending the situation, right? Depending what comes up when I'm cycling through my deck in what order, I can kind of tailor. And as you saw in my game against Paul, I had Super Falcon, and I also hit numbers at the same, not at the same time, but in the same game. And
Mhm.
so this deck can do both.
Okay. So, in other words, if someone doesn't have cannot hide forever, right? They don't have like a straight up canceller, you might be willing to just not do numbers if you get a good hand. Like if you get like a good Super Falcon hand, you might just go for it. I mean, it seems like you have the Destiny adders a little bit. Like you have Skywalkers here a little bit. You have two Gift of the Mentors. It sounds like you're kind of gearing up to like do like a massive attack all at once potentially. Um,
Well, that's one of it. That's one part too. But in my game against Paul, for example, I didn't have the opportunity to do numbers yet. It wouldn't have hit for that much, I think, is what happened. And so I actually went first with Super Falcon because I saw the opportunity. And then once Super Falcon was dead, then I went with the numbers route. And then I went, okay, now I just have to start draining.
okay.
And so it basically, it depends, but this thing can do kind of a lot of things.
Um, so so help me understand a little bit of kind of your choice of this because you do have some elements for traditional TRM, right? You have three Obies, you have three Lukes.
Mhm.
We usually see like distinct twos. You had two Obi-Wan's Hut, which I thought was interesting because and then you had like one spaceport. So it was like what made you do two Obi-Wan's Huts so heavily versus like another Yavin 4, side or whatever.
Oh, because I'm trying to get beggar out.
Okay. So you're
I
trying
have
to get
no other way to use beggar.
but why do bigger versus Tatooine Docking Bay 94? Like why avoid 94 and just do spaceport or two Obi-Wans?
Uh, that's a good question. Um, I think the spaceport. I think. Oh, okay. I think I remember now. If I have the docking bay, and I'm sitting at the docking bay, all they have to do is deploy to the docking bay and move to the hut. Now I have to respond to that somehow, right? It
Mhm.
forces me to have to answer to that. Whereas if I deploy the docking bay, they need a spy to come down to the hut, and if they come down to the hut, I have a lot of ways to beat them off of that location. Whereas with the docking bay, I kind of am already stuck there and deployed my guys. I think that was my rationale, but doing it that way.
Hmm. So, I mean, okay, basically you're using this just for beggar, and you're doing it
Mhm.
because of the Tatooine side, because it's a Twix, and they need a spy to go here, and you have a
Oh,
revolution. Yeah,
yeah, sorry, yeah, I forgot. I also have revolution, so in the late game I can make that a drain 3.
okay, and so that's kind of the goal. And this in this spaceport, is this designed just as a generic, like I can go to Raltier if I need to, or like what was the
Mhm.
thing behind this one?
Yeah, just another site that I can put wherever I want. Raw tier being an option, but let's say I'm stuck at Kifix or something, right? Something the dark side is deployed. Well, then I can drop my spaceport. Now I can go between ground and space. Whereas the Tatooine, that's likely not possible. My guys are going to be stuck at Tatooine docking bay.
Okay. No, that makes sense, and I have not seen as many decks do that as I would like to. I
Mm,
have seen sometimes raw ops will not deploy their docking bay because they see an
right,
OB or they see someone. So I do like the fact that you give yourself some protection to transfer.
right.
So no, I think that's good. I think there was another deck here. You said you didn't know what it was, but there was one from. Oh, let me grab it up and we can kind of do. Uh, yeah, okay, yeah, okay. Maybe this is what it was. Yeah,
Oh
so
yeah.
yeah, so Bastion did do a profit version of this. He did, and obviously this is a profit. It's not a TRM, but he did have a similar idea of have droids add a scomp link and then you can do that so he got a scomp link versus 94. You can't really do that those two sides. So that was a kind of a similar idea to cycle through. He didn't have, obviously, this was not a numbers deck. I don't see any Destiny adders except for this one potentially, but that was the other example I had. So yeah, so
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember it also allows you to stack your deck, so you can start tracking things, stacks of things.
I see, because you're discarding in the order that you want to. I
Right.
see. Oh, okay. All right. So when you were doing this, you would
Yes.
love to stack something very pretty. Okay.
Right. And so that's one thing that you just reminded me. So the idea is I have all these zeros, right? These locations. I cycle through my deck and I take every single or as many of those zeros out as I can. Now my activation is huge the following turn, and now my destiny is a bunch of high destiny fives and fours and stuff.
That makes sense.
Which again, very good against raw tier.
That makes sense. That's awesome. All right. Okay. So Courage of a Skywalker, you were trying to do some protection against dueling. I'm guessing this was more for Obi-Wan because Jay Luke naturally has
Hmm.
-3, although
Hmm.
Jay Luke could still use that. Okay, we didn't end up seeing any hunt downs, I don't believe.
Uh,
Interesting enough.
that's right, right. That was wait, wasn't there? Or maybe that was the classic movie I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Yeah, there was no
yeah,
there wasn't a dueling hunt down. There was a hunt down. It wasn't a dueling hunt down.
yeah. That's true. Yeah, it was a hunt down ties. That's correct. Yeah,
Mhm.
correct. Yeah, not dueling. You're right. Okay, awesome. All right. Any other thoughts on your TRM deck and anything for other people we should have gone
Uh,
over?
no, I just wish I had something to deal with Talon roll. That's what got me in that game, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Dr. Torch had 2 talent rolls in that deck, and he had Dark Maneuvers, and so you had some abilities, and you did not use Captain Han Solo. Unfortunately,
Right.
the Pistol Han is more Destiny, but he doesn't add the maneuver, so I guess kind of it is what it is. And help me understand though. I guess yeah. You opted for 1 Falcon. Um, yeah, you don't have retrieval here, so basically you really can't lose this Falcon. I guess what it is, but you're. It sounds like your initial plan would be like to deploy the big four, like Han, Leia, Luke, and Obi together, and then try to get like Skywalkers and Gift of the Mentor and all of those Destiny Adders all at once. Was that like a goal, like getting all 4 there?
I mean, that'd be like a amazing thing if that could be done. Obviously, that's pretty difficult, but Skywatch is good. It also stops barrier, and so if I'm also on the ground with Luke and Leia, then that's extra more destiny. Because again, this deck built to kind of get on raw tier fast and be very very dangerous on raw tier. So if you got like a stack of guys, Gift of the Mentor, Skywalkers, all very very good cards. Give you more battle destiny. Also, again, they're Destiny 5, which is nice, and you can stack it with how do we get into this mess.
Cool. I think that's all we had. So thank you, thanks Eddie, thanks Nrabbit. It's been really educational. Appreciate it, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.
Thank you.